you are joining us on Facebook, welcome. I'm Lauren Van Hemert, and this is Sarah Bock and Alli Mae Carnes. And Sarah, you are going to start doing some interviews for us.
Yep.
And Alli is your first. And I know you guys know each other, so this is going to be really cool. If you have any questions, type them in the Facebook chat on our Do You On Stage, and I will see you guys at the end. Have fun.
Okay, so my first question for you is like, how did you start theater? Like, how did you get into it?
Oh, okay. So I grew up in Florida and I started dancing literally. So the dance studio I went to, they had a rule that you'd be 3 years old. And so my birthday is June 20th, and on June 21st, the day after I turned 3, I was in dance class. That's like not even an exaggeration. Yeah, started dancing when I was 3, started like competitively dancing when I was like 5. Really took off with it. And when I was like 6 years old, one of my dance teachers like pulled my dad aside and was like, she's really good. She has a really good personality. Like she has like really good facial expressions on stage, things like that. I think she would be really good at theater. And my dad had taken me to like the Annie National Tour in Jacksonville. And I like looked at him and was like, can I do this one day? And and he was like, oh yeah, you can definitely do this one day. And so basically, he put me in voice lessons when I was 6 years old. But the thing was, I was terrified to sing in front of people. Like I would go to voice lessons, and my voice teacher and I would work on things, and I didn't like care. But then when she's like, "All right, you want to like have a recital?" I'm like, "No, I'm not singing in front of people." Like I was terrified. Um, so I danced. I continued to dance for several more years, and I went down a different path in like grade, I would say, really middle school. I started getting more into cheerleading. I was also a competitive cheerleader, like the stuff you see on Cheer, like that kind of competitive cheerleader.
Wow.
And so I like went to a gym like an hour away from my town. Like we drove 5 days a week. I am so sorry. We drove 5 days a week to Gainesville, which is like an hour from my hometown. And like I was serious. My parents were driving me there all the time, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to cheer in college, and I was constantly at the gym. And when my high school theater program, some from a really small town of like 10,000 people. I still like to dance, but I definitely liked cheerleading more. I had more training in dance. And my high school theater program had been cut due to funding by the new superintendent when I was in middle school. And that was the only theater anything in my town was the high school theater department. And so there really was no opportunity for me to do anything other than that. And so when it had been cut, I was just like, well, I'm not doing theater. Like that was something I always wanted to do when I was a kid, but couldn't. So I got in the ninth grade, and a new superintendent had been elected that year. And the first thing that she did was bring theater back to the high school because it was known all over the country for this theater department. It was like the only thing in my little town was this theater department. And so that was the first thing she did. And I had some friends that were like, okay, you need to audition. And I was like, no. I was like, I'm doing cheerleading. That's my thing now, right? And I went to go watch my friends in Hairspray. And when I went to go watch them, I was like, oh my God, like that's what I want to do. Like this is what I want. And I remember telling my parents that I wanted to quit all these years of cheerleading to do because I couldn't do both, right? Because they were both such a big commitment. And so I decided to tell my parents, hey, like I think I'm going to quit cheerleading to do high school theater. And they were like, you're kidding, right? I said, no, like I think this is what I want to do. And they're like, all right. And after my first show, I was like, yeah, this is what I want to do with my life. And so it was kind of a journey. It was a lot of ups and downs, but yeah, that's kind of how I got into theater was really in high school is when I really started getting into it.
That's awesome. So, do you have like a favorite show you've been in? Like one that just like will stick with you forever?
Early modern Millie. Oh my God. That was the first real dance show I'd ever been in. And like I had not really been too much, like I said, I had focused on cheerleading for so many years that I had not really been into the dancing aspect for a while. And so when I did Thoroughly Modern Millie, there's a lot of tap, and there's that show kicks my butt, vocally, in terms of dancing, everything. And I remember going to the dance call and my director being like, "Yeah, I think I want to make you dance captain." I was like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Okay." And so I was like, I guess I do. I guess I do really enjoy dancing and theater and stuff. And so that was like my second show in high school, and I just loved it. It was such a fun show. I love the music. I love. If you watch there's like a bootleg on YouTube. It's just a fun show.
So, what advice do you have for people like going into theater professionally about like all the ups and downs of it and all the rejection and all the highs and lows?
Yeah. So my number one piece of advice is to find interests. Some people will disagree with me on this, and that's okay. But find interest outside of theater, and let me explain why. I have been a person who like everything I did, eat, breathe, sleep theater. And like if you want to be on Broadway, if you want to do professionally, you should take it very seriously and spend a lot of your time doing that. But what I mean by find other interests is like find something that you don't feel like you have to be the best at, right? So like for me that was yoga, that was cooking, like things I didn't feel like I had to be the best of the best, and like always constantly striving, because there's a lot of rejection, there's so much rejection. And if you are constantly just like working, hustling, and you don't have something that you can like go to unwind from that exhaustion, no matter how much theater fulfills you, it's exhausting. And for me, like something that has always helped me is like, okay, I just had a really crappy audition. I did not do as well as I know I could have. Like, I just bombed it. Like, I've had those moments. And if I didn't have like something that I could turn to in those moments so that I didn't just like find my identity in just theater, I don't know what would have happened. So definitely having some things outside of theater that you can turn to when it is hard, because it's an emotional roller coaster. So that would be my number one piece of advice: is definitely have other interests so that you're not like getting so wrapped up in this one thing and putting all your eggs in one basket too, right? So definitely that. Another piece of advice I would have is like obviously work your butt off. I spent several years doing a lot of unpaid things. Now I don't, but I used to do a lot of unpaid stuff in order to build my resume, and I don't regret that at all. I do not. Some people will disagree with that as well, but it's so worth it because the experience that you get from things, like you definitely have to outweigh like the pros and cons when you do unpaid work. But just at first, like I didn't say no to anything that I got for a while. So I was like, I just need to build my resume, especially once I moved here. So that's another piece of advice I have. And also just like, I guess the number one thing as well, so I guess it would be number one thing along with having other interests, is like you have to, at the end of the day, be okay with yourself, because this business will tear you to pieces, man. Like, and I love it. So I'm not trying to make it sound like it's awful. But like there are times when you're like, I've walked out of an audition room before and been like, I am trash. Like I am absolute trash. I am never going to do anything with this. Like, the whole self-loathing. And at the end of the day, I have to be like, no, I am so much more than who I am as an actor, who I am as a performer. And I like myself apart from my accomplishments, because if we like tie ourselves to our accomplishments, that is really fulfilling when we're doing great, but really, really lonely when we're not. So
Awesome. So, what's it like seeing both sides of the audition table since you've been directing and choreographing, but you've also been like auditioning and things like that?
yeah, so definitely being behind the audition table has made me a better performer, because you see things that like you don't normally see in an audition, and you hear the conversations that go on behind the table. The number one thing that opened my eyes being behind the table was like, you hear all the time, just because you didn't get a role doesn't mean it has anything to do with you, right? It could be anything. And that's so true. And I knew that, I've always known that, but being behind the table has taught me like, that is so true. Like there have been times where I'm like, okay, like if I'm trying to choose between two girls for this role and one's better at acting and one's better at singing, like, and you're literally, we've been in that situation before, and it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know, and so it's hearing like sometimes it just comes down to the smallest things, and that's a big thing I've learned is like, okay, sometimes it has nothing to do with you, like it might be the way you looked with another character when we saw you read with them. It might be like your height, it might be your hair color, it might be your eye color, it might be anything. And so that's definitely a big lesson that I learned. Another thing that I learned, I feel like, is like just the nerve. Like for me, I still get so nervous before auditions. But being behind the table again, I'm like, there's nothing like. I used to go on auditions thinking that like they're waiting for me to fail, like they're just waiting for me to screw it up, like. But no, it's the exact opposite. Like when you walk into an audition room and I'm behind the table, I am rooting for you because you could solve all of my problems. Like in terms of like me looking for this character to fill this role, like you could be it for me. Like you could help me out, right? Like if you do well, you are helping me out. And so that's another thing that really opened my eyes is I'm like, because I used to just go into auditions immediately apologizing, almost not verbally, but with my presence, apologizing for being there and for taking up their time and taking up like that space. And like that's not a good look. And so something I've learned is like the presence and the energy people give off immediately definitely is something like just from observing so many people, for sure.
And also, as someone who's behind the table a lot, like, how do you feel the Black Lives Matter movement ties into casting and theater?
That's a good question. So I feel like it starts also like before we get into casting, like I will be very transparent as someone who is an actor, a white female actor, who like it's very competitive for white females specifically in theater, right? And I have heard, this is I've heard a lot of white girls say, well, they decided to, cast it in a little bit of a more diverse way. I have heard other white females say that. And it is super easy when your ego is crushed because you didn't get that role and a Black female did. It's super easy to be like, oh, well, they just wanted to go that route. Like, they want to make themselves look good. It's easier to do that. That's a cop out though, because no, maybe she was just better than you. Like, like honestly, like that is something I've even thought to myself is like, oh, I clearly wasn't what they were looking for because they cast a Black female. That's not, no, maybe she just was actually better than me. Right. And so definitely in terms of casting, like there's no such thing as just like color blindness, right? Like that's what I've seen a lot on social media is like people are like, oh, I don't see color. That's not true. That's just not true. And I've heard a lot of directors say like, oh, it's not realistic for, Black people to play this character when nothing in the script insinuates that the person has to be white. They just think like they've had this movie in their head their whole lives of like, this is what this person has to be white. Like for example, like Elwood. People think that like that has to be a white blonde female. It really doesn't. It really doesn't. Like I understand the character, like you think from the movie in your head, you think, okay, this person has to be a white blonde female. It really doesn't. Same thing with Glinda and Wicked, for example. So I think in terms of casting, there's no such thing as color blindness, but truly casting the best person for the role. Like, like it's simple. It's really simple, but we have to be willing to recognize our biases and be willing to be better. Like, now that you know better, do better. And so I think that's something that's really come like a really good thing that has come from everything going on in the world is that it has opened up a lot of conversations. Like I'm really enjoying the torn conversations that are going on because, like there are things I have learned from talking to other talking to, my Black friends in theater that are like, oh no, you have no idea some of the stuff we've gone through, just even treatment by production teams and things like that. So, did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so you also teach, right? Like at Raleigh Act. So
Yeah.
how did you get into being an actor to being a choreographer slash director slash like teacher?
Yeah. So many people don't know this, but I have my master's in theater education. So, okay, so let's start from the beginning here. I started teaching dance. I've always like wanted to teach dance. So when I was like 5 years old, dance was my life. Like constantly going to competitions, things like that. When I was 5 years old, I have two cousins. I was an only child for the first 10 years of my life. So I did not have siblings, but I had two cousins. One was 6 months younger than me. So she was basically a sister, and the other one was 3 years younger than me. And those two cousins were sisters. And I'm going somewhere with this, I promise. Um, but I loved dance, and they danced at my studio, but they were not as much into it as I was. So I loved dance so much, I decided to have a dance recital at my house. I typed up programs. I was literally 6 years old. I typed up programs. I made costumes. I charged $5 admission fee. I was an entrepreneur. So all that to say, like I loved choreographing. I literally choreographed. There's like 15 dances in this dance recital, and three of us. So I had like solos and duos, and trios, and group dances, all that. So anyway, like I feel like teaching has always like been in me. Like it's not a surprise to my family that I am a dance teacher, like at all, because that's been in me since the beginning. So there's that. But I got specifically into teaching here in this area. Blair Thompson, who is the owner of Raleigh Act, was pretty much the only person I knew when I moved here. And she is an extremely dear friend of mine. And oh my God, I love her so much. But before I even moved here, my first audition in the area was for Newsies at North Carolina Theater. And I did not even know Blair like that well. Like I just knew of her, and had like interacted with her on Facebook, but we had mutual friends, which is how I got connected with her. And I messaged her on Facebook and was like, "Hey, I was still in my senior year of college, and I decided to audition for Newsies. Like, keep in mind, I don't know anything about the theater, like the theater community in Raleigh at the time, so I didn't know like North Carolina Theater was legit, like a legit theater, right? So like I thought it was like a community theater, so which is fine, but I also just like I had no idea. So I go into this like Newsies audition, and it's intense. But before I like talked to Blair, and she like encouraged me and like you got this, and like told me everything I need to know. She's like, you realize like everyone's gonna know each other. You're not gonna know anyone, and they're all gonna know each other. She's like, it's gonna be hard. Like it's gonna be hard. And I was like, it's okay, I got this. So Blair, I've known Blair since I moved here, and I worked a full-time job up until, so I didn't really have time to do anything other than like stuff in the evenings from like 7 p.m. on. And I decided in September of 2019, so it's been less than a year, that I was going to like quit the 9 to 5 stuff, which is a whole story, but quit the 9 to 5 job and freelance, which was terrifying. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever done, but it's been so worth it. And so that was when Blair like reached out to me and was like, "Hey, are you still like you?" I guess she was just looking for choreographers, and she knew like I had done that in high school, which I'll tell you about because I forgot to tell you about that. But she knew I had like choreographed before and taught dance and stuff. And she's like, "Do you have any of your work?" And so I sent her a video, and we like got coffee. And she's like, "Yeah, if like I want to try you out, and I want to see." So I like choreographed JTF Annie for JTF for them.
JTF.
Yeah, so much fun. And then I choreographed some numbers in Frozen for them, and so I started out slowly, but then just got into it and was like, I was so fulfilled by it. Oh my gosh. Like just, I love kids. I've always loved kids. I've always loved teaching. But merging that passion for teaching and children, like and theater, all of that in one. It was just like, it was the best thing ever, like how fulfilled I felt from it. So I guess like getting back into choreography in high school, I had, it was a high school theater department, and we had a choreographer, but she only came like twice ever, like because she lived far away. And so it was up to me to like choreograph the smaller numbers, like if it wasn't like a big number for her to choreograph. And so like basically my theater director would be like, hey Allie, like you're dance captain for this. Can you just make up something for this real quick? Like I didn't have like time to go home and go make up something. I had to like make things up on the spot, which was nerve-wracking, but looking back was like it taught me so much, and it was a great learning opportunity for me. But yeah, that was kind of how I got into choreography. So I choreographed a lot of my high school shows that I was in, which is hard, really hard to choreograph things that you're in. Yeah, and then that's how I got into Raleigh Act. And I worked with Gallery when I first moved here. And so when they reached out to me about Matilda, I was like, yes, yes. So yeah, it's been a journey. I love choreographing more than I thought I would. I love it. I just love it. Oh, yeah, because I get to like teach acting too.
That's awesome. So, speaking of Matilda, you were the choreographer for that, and I was also in that. So, what was your thought process like choreographing that? Because the music and the choreography is so different from everything else.
My thought process was, it went from excited, super excited, to meeting with David Sebring at a Buffalo Wild Wings in Durham, like last summer, and talking about it and being like, and he telling like, okay, he's very much like, these are the numbers I want choreographed. Like, okay. So it's July of last year, and he's telling me this, and I'm like, okay. And I remember leaving that meeting and being like, holy crap, what have I done? Like, I'm not cut out for this. Like, I remember being like, and we talked about the set and like everything that we wanted to do, just all of it. And he's like, listen, like, this is a hard show, like, because he had done it with Children's Theater of Charlotte, I think, and he'd done the sound for them or something. And he's like, listen, like, I know you've choreographed shows before, but this is like, the choreographer has a lot of work in this. And I said, yeah, I'm figuring that out. Like, I don't know. I did not know what I was getting myself into. And so that was the initial thought process. And then like, I was even super nervous going into auditions, because like, you need strong dancers. And I remember being like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, even making up the audition dance, I was like, I do not know what I'm going to do if the kids can't do this. And thankfully, like, you and like a few other kids had done theater before, and we got super lucky with you guys. And there were also some kids that had never done theater before, but acted like they picked up things like they had been doing it their whole life.
Yeah.
I feel like I just got really lucky, to be honest with you, like with the cast that we had. But it was definitely like some like freaking out moments, definitely some imposter syndrome of like, I am not worthy of choreographing this. I do not feel like I'm cut out for this at all. But definitely like, there were some panic moments where I was like, even throughout choreographing the show, because there are so many styles of Matilda, like it's not classic dance, like it's not musical theater dance, it's not a chorus line or anything like that. And so that's what I have experienced choreographing, is like Beauty and the Beast, Thoroughly Mono and Millie, like like Aladdin. These are the things that are like very dancey, like what you think of as dance. And Matilda's like hard hitting and rough, like in some ways. It also has like salsa dancing and like, it just so many styles. And I was like, I did not know what I was getting into, but it was so rewarding in the end. And like, seeing what like the amount of hours that I put in to just like coming up with choreography in my small bedroom mirror, and like refusing to watch a Broadway tape because I don't do that when I choreograph. But like, seeing all the hours that I put in like come to fruition and like see it actually work out, I was like, it was very rewarding. It was very rewarding, and I was so proud of you guys. Like, it was awesome.
Oh, we have a question. Oh, so somebody has a question about your decision to quit your 9 to 5 job and the preparation and leap of faith it took to make your art a primary source of income.
Oh my God. So this is like, I just want to add like full disclosure here, like nothing about that. Like I do not want anyone to be like, oh my gosh, she's got it all together, because no, like it was the most terrifying thing I had done. And like I have my former boss on Facebook. So like, hey Andrew, if you're watching this, I doubt you are, but if you are, so like we had total open communication about this. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm like bashing my old 9 to 5. But like I started working I started working at Northwestern Mutual. Basically like I waited tables. I was an ABA therapist for like my first few months living in Raleigh because it's expensive to live here. And I was fresh out of college. So I was a therapist for a while, and then I was like when I was cast in Legally Blonde, I was like, no, I think I actually like don't want to do counseling anymore, which was a whole thing. And I started working at Northwestern Mutual, and like I got that job being fully like honest about like this is not what I want to do the rest of my life. So like everyone knew that like when I was hired, but it was like a nice, comfy 9 to 5 job, benefits. My boss was wonderful and did not count how many days I took off. Like he just trusted that I wasn't going to abuse that. It was salaried, health insurance, 401k, you name it. Everything that you could want in a jobs that people stay at their entire lives. And so for that, I cannot complain. But also like I had gotten a lot of opportunities to do things during the day, and I had to turn them down. And the more like my first year here, I was just, like I said, taking everything I could that I could do in the evening, whether it paid or not. And about, I was, finishing up I was doing my master's, and I was like, oh, well, I'm going to go into theater education. So I was still shying away from doing theater itself. And I was like, oh, I'll teach high school theater. That was what I had planned to do. And this was about a year ago, actually. And I just thought like the only way you can ever do theater, like, or art really, is if you like live in New York, right? Um, and so what I did was, about, I would say probably at this point, July or August, I started getting jobs that paid really well. Like I got a commercial in Greensboro, but they wanted to shoot like every day for 2 weeks. And I was like, well, I can't take 2 weeks off work, but also this pays really well. And sorry if you hear Piper growling, she has a toy. But anyway, so I like was fully open with my boss and was like, hey, you and I are close enough, like you've seen my Facebook post, you know that theater is my passion. He's like, oh yeah, totally. And I said, well, I got a job and like doing this, but I would need to take the next 2 weeks off. He's like, okay, well, let's switch you to hourly. He's like, and I'm going to have to hire someone else because I had a lot on my plate at work. And he's like, so I was like, basically like, I went from like 40 hours a week to like 30 hours a week or something like that, or 25. And then I started getting more and more jobs, like through that connection with that commercial. And basically I was like, I can't turn these jobs down. So I like called my boss one day and was like, listen, like I'm just getting more jobs. I can't believe it. And of course, but also it was still terrifying because they're like 5-week jobs. What do I do when that's over? So I started teaching for VIP Kid, which is teaching English to kids in China, which I'm still able to teach, which I love. And it's like, every artist has their side gig. That's my side gig, but it does not feel like a typical side gig. Like I love it so much.
You went to somebody's birthday party, right? I saw on your Facebook.
Yes, I have my kids. Like I have new students all the time, but I have like my core group of kids. Like I teach families. Like I have 3 brothers that all take classes from me, and like, I'm like close with their family. That little boy, I teach him and his brother, and yeah, it's, oh my gosh, I love my only complaint is how early I have to wake up in the morning, but that's okay. So yeah, that's my side gig. So I started doing that in August, like to prepare, because I knew I'm going to leave this job any day. And basically, I got so many jobs that my boss was like, I think it's time. And I said, yeah, I think so too. And so I trained 2 girls to take my place and left. And it was super bittersweet and terrifying. But I guess the moral of the story is things always somehow work out. I've definitely like those first like 2-3 months, I was like, am I like, am I gonna make it? Because I live alone, so I like, don't have a roommate, so that's expensive, and just I have a new car, things like that, and so I was terrified. But it is true that things always work out. Like something would pop up where I had to sub for a dance class, or something would, it just always ended up working out, and it always has. Um, so, did that answer the question? I'm a good rambler.
Let me check. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's making art your primary source of income is not reliable, but it's also not as bad as people say. Like you hear starving artists all the time, and I'm not rich. I'm not saying I'm rich at all, but I have learned how to like have a stable life doing it, and it takes a lot of self-control and a lot of planning. Like you can't just like quit your 9 to 5 job and just go out into the unknown when you have bills. Like that's a real thing. But it always works out. I don't even like that sounds so cliche, but it really does. It always works out.
So you mentioned that you did like a commercial, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think is like the difference between being on set and then like doing theater?
So doing theater, like you become a perfectionist because you are doing it live. And so you're like, okay, I had this one moment, like that's it. Right. And so that's actually my favorite thing about theater is if you're not there, you miss it. Like there will never be another performance. It doesn't matter if you're doing 5 performances, they're all gonna be different. And so if there's something that happens like and you're not there, you miss it. Whereas so because of that, like I'm used to like just being so hard on myself to like get it right the first time, because you don't get another chance that night at least. And so working on set and film, it it's funny because like I mess up like the first time and they're like, it's fine. Like they're so nice about it. And I'm like, but I messed up. And they're like, no, it's okay. Um, so like that's one thing I do enjoy about it is like I feel like there's a lot less pressure. Personally for me, I enjoy like the lack of pressure. Like you can mess up your lines a little bit and just start over. That's okay. So it's a little like the stakes are a lot lower in terms of that for sure. Like you can redo it. And like you can redo it a million times to get the perfect take, which I enjoy. But also, like I said, there's just that exhilaration of knowing you can't do it over. So like the aspect of theater that where you have to improv because something on stage goes wrong, or like, I've like pretty much like busted my face on stage before, like fallen. Like, how do you recover from that? And so things like that. I love that aspect of theater too.
Do you have a preference between film and theater?
Theater for sure. Just because again, just the live, I am in love with it. The money in film, yes. Like I feel like film pays a lot more. Uh, Depending on the project, I guess. But yeah, I feel like you can make more in a shorter amount of time with film than you do in theater. But man, there's just nothing like working with a cast and like that feeling on opening night. You know what I mean? Like just that
Yeah.
feeling on opening night of like the nerves and the like, who knows what's gonna go wrong? Like we just had a horrible dress rehearsal, or in terms of Matilda, like we didn't even have a last dress rehearsal. Just that like
Crazy.
the nerves and the adrenaline. Oh, I live for it.
So you did Legally Blonde at Gallery, right? And was that your first show there?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like you told me before, like, that show was kind of like a turning point for you or something like that, and it made you realize how much you wanted to, like, actually pursue it. So,
Yeah.
what was your experience with that?
Oh, okay. So, I had just moved to Raleigh, literally a month before auditions for Legally Blonde. And I was at a point in my life. I was supposed to go, I had been admitted to University of Colorado Boulder to get my PhD in clinical and mental health counseling. So like that was my path. That was what I was going to do. I was never doing theater again. Long story short, ended up moving to Raleigh. Long story, but I didn't want to be here. And I called my dad one day and was like, Dad, I was boohoo crying, and I had been here for a month and I hated it. I didn't have any friends. And I was like, I am depressed. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I can't go to grad school now, because like you have to live here for a year to get like North Carolina in-state tuition or whatever. And I was like, I got to wait a year to go back to grad school. Like, it's just, my life is a mess. Basically, I was just like, I feel like I'm doing it all wrong. And my dad goes, you know what? You have been spending the past several years taking care of everybody else. I think it's time that you do something for yourself. And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that means really for you specifically, but I think you need to do something that makes you happy, because you've been like busting your rear end to like, because I graduated college in 2.5 years. So those 2.5 years were like they're a blur for me, because I only worked and did school. Like, I didn't have friends. I didn't do anything else. And so that was when the next day, after my whole meltdown on the phone, I see Legally Blonde auditions, and I'm like, interested, but not, like back and forth. And decided to go, just because I was like, you know what, what do I have to lose, right? And I was terrified. I remember being like, if I'm just cast in a tree in the background, I will be happy. Like, I just wanted friends, and I just wanted to be a part of something and feel included. And so I ended up getting cast in like that cast. Like, gallery will even tell you, like, that's one of the best casts. Oh my God. It was just the people, the director, Kate Dahlquist, is one of my favorite humans in the whole world. And just some of the best friends I've ever made in my life. And so that gave me the confidence to audition for more things in Raleigh, because I was like, I'm not good enough to do anything in Raleigh. Like, I'm not going to get cast in anything in Raleigh. So it gave me the confidence to, audition for bigger things. And so that was when I auditioned for Ira David Wood's A Christmas Carol at Theater in the Park, and got into that, and was like one of 3 new people that year. So that was super intimidating. But got cast in that and made the best friends of my life in that show, which, like, just being around other like-minded artists, just, it's everything. And so I think meeting the people in Legally Blonde, which gave me the confidence to move forward, and meeting the people in Christmas Carol, those 2 shows and the people in it they truly changed my life, because it's one of those things where you don't realize like the state that you're in until you breathe fresh air, and you're like, oh, this is good for me. And when you are more in that like not toxic environment, you're able to like really connect to yourself and like dig deep into your inner self and know what you want. And so, like, for the first time in my life, I finally like felt like me. And so, yeah, the people in those 2 shows gave me the confidence I needed to feel like I could do it. Because I knew I always wanted to, like, deep down, but it was a fear of like not thinking I could,
Mm-hmm. Was Christmas Carol at DPAC?
Yeah, so 1 week is at Raleigh Memorial, and 1 week is at DPAC.
So what was it like performing on like such a huge stage?
It was so cool, because I think the last show before us was Hamilton. And so we were like, oh my God, like the Hamilton cast just touched this last week. Just touched this. So we joked about that a lot. But it was super cool being able, like, backstage at DPAC, the dressing rooms and all that. Like, first of all, the dressing rooms are have you ever been backstage at DPAC? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how far the dressing rooms are from the stage? Like, you got to climb like 3 flights of stairs. And so, like, I was a principal dancer in that show, and it was just like exhausting. So I hardly ever went downstairs to my dressing room. Like, I just kept everything upstairs. But Dancing, what I like about DPAC that's different from Raleigh Memorial is I really enjoyed like how close you are to that front row. That front row can see like your spit. Like it's crazy. I've never in my life seen a front row that close. And so like the last show we're crying and they are just like, I'm not kidding, they were so close. And so that was really cool. But also it doesn't seem as big. I guess just the way it's laid out, it doesn't seem as big as it is. But it's pretty dang big.
What are you doing during quarantine to keep yourself artistically fulfilled?
Oh gosh. So Matthew, my boyfriend, and I did a 6-part, was it 6 or 5? 5-part, I think. 5-part audio drama, which was so much work. And really, I feel like I can't even say that because Matthew did a lot more work than I did, but it was still a lot of work. So we, wrote that and recorded it and edited it and like made all the graphics for it and put it on YouTube. It's called Stuck Stories if anyone wants to go listen to it, by Aggregate Theater Company. But we did that for the first like month or so of quarantine. And that kept us really busy. And then after that, about during this time, actually, this is like the best decision I've ever made. I started doing the 12-week study Artist Way. Have you ever done it before?
Mm-mm.
Oh my God. I love it so much. So the Artist Way is basically like, it was created technically for people who feel like artistically stifled. So, and that's not why I started it, but it's for people that feel like they're not creative or feel like, for some reason they feel stuck. And it's all about how like we are all born to be creative people, because whether you're religious and you believe in God as a creator, or you believe in like evolution, no matter what you believe in, or in terms of how we got here, she's chasing a toy. In terms of how we got here, it doesn't matter. But whatever you believe, like you believe in some form of creation. And so if you believe that we were created, then we were created to be creators. And that was something that really opened my eyes to like, I've always thought of myself as like, I'm not as creative as a lot of people that I know. But like, that's not true. Like we all have that ability. And so doing that study was really helpful because you have to like take yourself on artist dates, which sounds really weird. But like you have to like, whether it's like watching a movie that inspires you artistically, or like going into the nature alone with like not without a phone or your pet or anything. It's up to you on what your artist date is, but it's whatever like artistically inspires you while you're by yourself. And you have to go on a weekly artist date, and you have to do a lot of journal prompts and things like that. But it like really does get like your juices flowing, I guess, your creative juices flowing. So I've loved doing that. I feel like I've learned so much. And like it really sets you free in a lot of ways. I feel like everyone would benefit from it. So that I have actually like, I can't believe I'm saying this on live, but I've written a few poems, and like no one has read them. Matthew's read 2 of them, and he's like, Allie, these are really good, but also like, he has to say that. So I've written a few poems, which has been fun. I have always wanted to write a book. And so I've been thinking about that a lot. And like, I have like a Google Drive full of thoughts and thoughts and thoughts. I used to have a blog, but no one reads those. So I have like a Google Drive of all my thoughts and things I want to make into a book one day. So still adding.
I would definitely read your book. Definitely.
So anyway, hold on. I think Lauren just said something.
Your boyfriend wants your dog to make a cameo.
She's making a cameo of all the toys that she's playing with right now. This is her coffee.
Oh.
Piper. She's obsessed with this toy. I can't even. Okay.
She's so cute.
And this is my water bottle. It's cute.
That's so big.
It's 128 ounces, but I started using it at the beginning of quarantine. This isn't one of your questions, but I'm just saying it. I started using it at the beginning of quarantine, and it like keeps you really, see, it has all the times, 7 a.m., 9 a.m.,
Nice.
Yeah. So I'm obsessed with it.
What are some of your pre-show and pre-audition rituals?
Okay. So people are gonna call me crazy, but I don't care. They work. My number one, like in terms anxiety in general, but definitely pre-show and pre-audition ritual is I like will tap my body and say everything I'm worried about. So like if right for an audition, I'm worried I'm not going to sing well. I'm worried I'm not going to hit that high note. I'm worried that they're going to think I suck. Like I just say it all. I just speak it into existence. Like this is what I'm worried about. And then it just feels like, I mean, I'm still worried about it, right? But it feels lighter because I just voiced it. So that is something that definitely, that's my number one ritual. I definitely just speak all my fears into existence, even before a show. Like I'm worried that I'm not gonna remember my lines. I'm worried, and I just tap myself literally all over my body, my head, my chest, my arms, and it helps. Breathing techniques, like, which is one way I do still use my counseling degree, is just being able to breathe and calm yourself down, which also like yoga, love yoga, which ties into the breathing that I was talking about. But yoga and meditation, that's something I do every day. So it's not technically solely a pre-audition and pre-show routine, but it's definitely something that calms me down and makes me feel more grounded and more into, more in tune to myself, I guess. So that, and what else? I mean, always drinking tons of water, as you can see. Throat coat tea, always. Love
Yes.
with honey. Um, during Divas at Raleigh Little Theater, I legit had laryngitis the week of Tech Week, and I also had finals for grad school that week. I was sick as a dog. It was horrible. And I was like, okay, I don't think I'm gonna be able to sing, but okay, I'll do my best. And I bought like legitimate like sticks of honey and just drink honey all day. So that works. So I tend to like just eat straight honey sometimes before shows.
Do you have any mentors or people you look up to in the arts?
Oh, for sure. I have two main ones, so I hope they're watching. I don't know. So my number one is Jennifer Schrader Williams. Do you know her?
Mm-mm.
She is a voice teacher. She teaches at Peace College, and she's a private voice teacher. She teaches at Raleigh Act. She was Belle on Broadway, and she replaced Laura Benanti in Swing. She is not only an amazing voice teacher, but a dear friend. She changed my life. Like I could cry talking about how much I love Jennifer. So definitely Jennifer. Lisa Jolly, who is oh my god, adore her. She helped me find parts of myself that I knew I had, but had a really hard time like letting go for whatever reason. Like she taught me like it's okay to play, and it's okay to fail, and it's okay to try new things, and just be yourself. Like Lisa Jolly is someone that's just so free that she sets others free by being herself, and that's something number one thing I've learned from her. So definitely Jennifer and and Lisa. But gosh, so many. Blair Thompson, who's also a dear friend. But yeah, I feel like I'm forgetting people, but those are like the immediate people that pop in my mind. David Sebring, who like met him through directing Matilda, but became a very dear friend as well because I wanted to start directing, and he's an awesome director, and learning so much from him as well. I wouldn't like call him a mentor because but he is definitely someone that I have learned a lot from.
Awesome. So, do you have any dream roles?
Oh, so many. Right, Piper. Piper has dream roles of Toto in Wizard of Oz, and I'm just kidding. Bruiser in Legally Blonde. No, so gosh, so number one, I feel like I don't have like a number one dream role. I just have so many. So my number one like play dream role, like if I could just choose one play dream role, would be Honey and Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. I love that show. It's crazy. So that would be my number one like play dream role, which is like a recent thing, but it's just a show I have fallen in love with. So that my musical theater dream roles would be like Katie in Mean Girls, which I would play any of the plastics in Mean Girls. Like that would be super amazing. But I just like love Katie, and like I just feel like I identify a lot with her, and like I love her music. So definitely her. Um, Gosh, so like Sandy in Grease has always been a big one. Sophie and Mamma Mia. Um, Dawn and Waitress. When I get older, I want to be Jenna because I feel like I really relate to Jenna. And that was something that like when I met Lisa, she's like, start preparing Jenna now, like so that you can audition in 10 years. And so, yeah, I would love to do that one day. And I definitely have roles that I'm like not old enough for yet because I look 15. But yeah, I feel like I have so many, but definitely like Katie and Mean Girls is a big one. I would love, there are some roles I would do again, but yeah.
What advice do you have for younger people who want to start training? Like, what types of training should they have?
So it's never too late to start training. For number one, I know that's not what you asked, but definitely it's never too late to start training. So, just going full force in. So I would say like in this day and age, like you gotta be solid in all of it. Like I think in the past, people have relied on just being like super good in one area. And I don't think it's that way anymore because I feel like our generation, I mean, just from teaching an acting class 1 hour ago with kids who don't, with kids who are not like looking to do this professionally, our generation has like a lot more access to resources than the previous generation. And so because of that, we're more equipped to be triple threats. And so you got to get training in all of it, right? So singing, dancing, acting, like we all have our thing that we think like we're the strongest at. Like you hear people that say I'm a dancer who sings, or like I'm a singer who moves, or whatever. But it's important to be strong in all three, because like I said, the competition is fierce. So for me, like I I guess my biggest piece of advice would be to not count yourself out though, because I've always identified as primarily a dancer. And I was always like, I'm a dancer who can kind of sing. And then that was another thing with Legally Blonde where I was like, oh, wait, maybe I'm not. Maybe, and that was something that during that show and Jennifer Schrader Williams taught me is like, no, you're not a dancer who sings. You are a singer and a dancer and an actor. Like, stop discounting yourself. And so, definitely singing, like I feel you can have like your thing that you think you're most skilled in or whatever, but it's important to have training in all three. And I think in terms of acting, people are really quick to dismiss the acting. Like I've been behind the table and they're like, oh, this person's not really good at acting, but they can sing and dance, so like they're cast. Because people tend to value singing over acting. But I've heard beautiful voices on stage, but like they're not getting the message across. So like what's the point? What is the point of telling a story, like of singing a story beautifully if you can't tell it, right? So like you can't tell it with your emotions and with your body and your face. So I think acting, like there's so much acting that goes into singing and so much acting that goes into dancing. The freer and more skilled and equipped you feel with acting, the better you're going to be at the other two. So it's hard to say like one's the most important. They're all so important. But I feel like in terms of like one affecting the others, acting affects all, acting seems to me the most important because it ties in all three.
Yeah. My last question is, if you could tell yourself from a couple years ago, what would you tell yourself?
Wow. Oh god. Like just one thing? There's so many things.
Well, anything you want, like as many things as you want.
Oh, don't sell yourself short. I think like Well, okay. No, it doesn't matter if other people believe in you. You need to believe in yourself. It doesn't matter if everyone believes in you. You still got to believe in yourself. Um, Believing in yourself is the most important thing. And I can only say that because I have people in my life that have helped me believe in myself. But at the end of the day, like I've had Matthew watching. Matthew has had to tell me, I can sit here and compliment you all day long, but if you don't believe in yourself, it's pointless. And it's so true. So I would say that's number one thing is it doesn't matter who believed in you, who doesn't believe in you. You got to believe in yourself. Don't count yourself out. Don't sell yourself short. You are capable of so much more than you think, for sure. I would say that any young artist who is like afraid, you just got to go all in. You got to go all in. It's better to ask it's better to look back on your life and know like, okay, I know what happened because I pursued this, rather than looking back on your life and being like, what if I had done this? So, yeah, definitely all of those things.
Awesome. Okay, that was my last question.
Thank you, Sarah, for doing this.
Thank you. I miss you.
I miss you too. Matilda was so fun.
You guys are so darn cute. Ah, sorry. I'm like over there watching and listening, and I was like, oh, wait a minute, they're done. Thank you so much for doing this, Sarah.
Thanks for having me do it. I loved
I don't
it.
know, Allie. She's a really good interviewer. She may be needing to take my job soon.
She's so cute. I love her. She's my girl. She can do big things.
Well, thank you for this, Sarah. I hope we can come up with more folks for you to interview. I love I keep saying children are going to lead the way, and I really believe that's true. So I think we need to hear more voices like yours. So thank you for that, and thank you, Allie and Piper. And please come back and join us at 7:30 tonight. If you've been following us on Instagram, um, I've been participating in a campaign called Share the Mic Now, Keep Sharing the Mic. And all week long, I've had these amazing Black artists taking over our social media platform. And today, Shonda Branch is taking over Instagram. So you can go there and see some of the great things she's posting and talking about. And then at 7:30 tonight, she'll be moderating the Torn panel. And I know, Allie, you said you would turn over your Instagram to your Instagram platform. So I hope that happens. And I just hope we can encourage everybody to share the mic. I think this is a really great campaign and a good moment for us to rally together and show solidarity. So
I've learned so much from other people's accounts, like things that I probably never would have seen otherwise. And oh my goodness, I learned more in watching on Glenn. I think it was Abby Wambach. Someone took over her account. I learned more in that 73 minutes than I have in years. And just, it's so important. I love it.
Somebody took over Elizabeth. I love Elizabeth Gilbert, the writer, and somebody had taken over her account, and I learned so much that day. And even Sarah, you have volunteered to give your account over. So I hope one of our local child performers will take over your account, and we're just gonna keep this going, keep this initiative going. So thank you guys for everything. Come back at 7:30. Join us for the Torn panel. And tomorrow, I'm going to say this now because I know there's a lot of people sharing information about Juneteenth, a play that's going to be streaming on Saturday that was co-written, directed, and produced by a football player in Dallas, a Dallas Cowboys defensive end. I don't follow football, but I will be interviewing Greg Ellis tomorrow to talk about Juneteenth. So please join me for that conversation at 5:00. Thank you guys. And I will see everyone later on tonight. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.